Hi everyone, this is Startup Grind Marburg. Um, I'm your host Serghei Glinca. Today's guest is Vicky Pirzas, and upfront a big thanks to CSL Behring, Startup Hessen, and Gründerverse for supporting our events. All right. Hi Vicky, how are you today?
Very well, thank you, Serghei. And yourself?
Yeah, as you know, a lot of meetings, but I'm always excited about the startup grind events because after the event, you feel pumped with energy.
Well, I
So,
hope I can really add to that. So,
yeah, sure. So, just a quick intro. Vicky is a managing director, which is exciting, of CSL Behring Innovation, and she's building with her team the biotech ecosystem in Marburg. But she's also the vice president of recombinant product development at CSL. Vicky, welcome. Let's start with a introduction about you. What did you study? Where? Why? Were there any triggers for innovation early on during your studies?
yeah. So thanks again. Thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to come on to these podcasts. I studied both chemistry and biochemistry. I couldn't quite decide which one I liked the best, and I also loved maths. So I couldn't sort of give up the maths element. So, and then the chemistry always excited me and sort of stimulate my thinking in many different ways. And so I decided to do a double major. And sort of continued with that. I studied at Swinburne University of Technology in Australia in Melbourne, and I chose the university also because the university was a little bit different to your traditional pure study subjects. The university incorporated not only the degree subjects, but it also gave you an opportunity to go for 6 months at a 2 6 months placements in an industry. And I always felt that I would love to get into the industry because I always wanted to do something that made difference to people, difference to what I've done. And I decided to go down that path, and I have to say, I loved every minute of it.
Whether any experience early on, are there any touch points with entrepreneurship or in general innovation in those years?
Yeah. So the university also provided an opportunity for us to do a 3 months project, a project of our own choice. So I chose a project in biochemistry where I could create my own molecules. And at that time, I really didn't know, I have to say, I didn't know what I was doing. But it was just exciting to be able to create something on your own that you think could make a difference. And so that was my very first taste with innovation, entrepreneurship, see where it would take me. Um, and of course we had to do a lot of hard work, but I have to say it was fun. It gave us so much energy just to tinker and play and see where it would get us, and so see what we could produce in the end. And so that sort of gave me that taste to see where it could go. But even early in the career, I mean, my parents always had a business, so I always had an inkling towards, doing
Ah,
something business wise,
mhm.
and it sort of combining that with the chemistry and the biochemistry I was learning. So there was always, I think there was always that taste for the business element as
Yep.
well as for the analytical side of things.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, So I remember when we met for the first time, we also brainstormed about what innovation is, and I'm always curious to learn.
Mhm.
Is there any framework that you like? How you think about innovation, or like nowadays we talk about
Yep.
ecosystems, maybe some high level, low level ideas or frameworks you would like to share with us?
Hmm. So there were a couple of different things, and that I've learned around my career. But for me, innovation was I have a problem and I need to create a solution. And you know, I always approached that thinking with, okay, a problem statement and what are the potential solutions? How can I get to them? How can I resolve the problem? And so I like to do it sort of systematically brainstorming. One of the companies I've worked for early on in my life, actually called Sortec Research at that time, they were very innovative in their and creative in their thinking, and so that they told us, well, you can have 4 days you work for the company, and
Mhm.
1 day a week you innovate whatever you want. But part of that, they also gave us some tools and processes to think of. So we learned very early on a lot of brainstorming skills. How do we brainstorm? How do we create? How do we sort of really energize people in the room? So we learned different techniques. They also put us through the De Bono six head thinking as well as the lateral thinking, which is very different of a way of approaching a problem. Which was really a little bit crazy, but
What
it
is that?
always worked in the end, right? Because you never knew. You sort of had, okay, you wanted to generate what they gave us the example of shock absorbers for the car, and so you had to start with, I've got a square, right? And then you have to think about, okay, how does that square fit into the car, and what does that square do to the car? And so you really started totally out of context. And then you brought it back to the problems. And I mean, we were developing at that time a lot of topical products for different varieties. And I was amazed actually how well the technique works with, taking the sun, suddenly thinking about the sun and thinking, okay, how do I create this topical product, and sort of linking that back in. But most of the time is systematic. It's really sitting down, clearing your brain, because I think our brains are like those, snow globes, and they are full of stuff flashing around. So until you clear it, you can't see what's in front of you. So yeah.
Okay, okay. We need to get deeper with. You are in Melbourne. You study. There's a link to entrepreneurship, like pragmatism in like, let's say, practical applications
Mm.
of science, and then you enter the pharmaceutical world. Was this from the beginning kind of your thing to innovate, or having this affinity to okay, it's industry, it's applied science, it's processes? How was the transition from like pharma? Was it from the beginning about innovation, or was it something your past, something different?
Look, I was always very curious. I always had that curiosity element in it. So I think from very early on, I would always find different ways of doing things, or creating my own little world out there. So when you are a kid, you continuously tinker and play, and so I already found very early on, as a child, I continuously you know tried to create something different, something new. And so I think it happened a lot earlier in the career. I think that biochemistry field just drove me down a path that I thought it was great. I also considered, actually, before I did doing chemistry, because my father was my whole family was in the hotel management school, and I was also intrigued how chefs create their foods, right? So I always thought, okay, do I go into pharma industry, or do I go into maybe the wine, or the cooking? Because I mean, there is so many brilliant chefs really using chemistry to create foods to generate new elements. And so I think for me, it came at a very early on, where I continuously wanted to do something different, find different ways, even if it was in the kitchen, right? Just recreate something that would blow your mind. Water that tasted like chocolate, or
This curiosity in creating new things. How I think how does it fit into corporate structure? Because corporates require a certain structure that things are reproducible, processes are defined. How, let's say, and there is some um, voices that say like corporates are not innovating. I'm just putting it out there.
Mhm.
So how does this change in, like, a step back and changing, like, there is a saying, never change a running system,
Mhm.
and it's kind of legitimate to say we need this reliability, reproducibility, and those processes, so the system is running. How was your experience with this curious approach to change things, build something new throughout your career? How do you, like, what career advice would you give, more
Mhm.
specifically, to people who would like to change things but they are embedded in a corporate environment?
Look, I would always say challenge the status quo. I think, we very quickly start to think we can't change something, and we don't challenge it often enough. And I think, corporate structures are not rigid, but I think people are just afraid maybe to challenge things. And I've experienced that a lot throughout my life, where I remember working at a Austrian company, and, well, actually Swiss company in Austria, and I went into the production, which you would think the really rigid environment. And I looked at the guy doing the process, and I said to him, Why are you doing this?" And he said, "I don't know. It says I have to." And I said, "Okay." So I went to the next guy and I said, "Why are you doing this?" And I asked three people, and no one could tell me why they were doing this.
Mhm.
They were just doing it because it said so. And I said, "Well, does it actually make sense?" And just me challenging that, and really saying, this makes no sense. Why would we execute this process in that way? Actually, someone higher up went, "Oh, you're right. I don't know why we do it."
Okay.
Right? And so I think, even in the corporate world, especially in the production, maybe R&D is a little bit different,
Mhm.
but even in production, we are continuously learning and evolving. And when we stop, that's when businesses fail. I mean, there's so many businesses out there that were successful and stop innovating, right? I mean, look at Kodak. They had everything, and they just failed because they failed to see they failed to innovate. And I think now, I mean, if I look at our company right now, I think there is a lot of change, and there's a lot of change because people are starting to say, "Why are we doing this? Is there a better way to do it?" Instead of putting a stamp 5 times, why can't I do an electronic signature, right?
Yeah, I understand.
And I think it's a lot of little things. Yes, corporates do have a structure, and they probably have more than a structure. I think if I look at our R&D environment, um, we need to have a focus. We need to have a focus on, we have a focus on our therapeutic areas. And that just gives us a guidance, where do we go? So, yes, if I suddenly wanted to do something in the cancer research, it doesn't fit the business. I would have to probably say, well, I need to go somewhere else.
Mhm.
But as long as I'm operating within, our 5 therapeutic areas, whether it's respiratory, hematology, immunology, in the rare disease space, this is my playfield. This is where I can operate. And, we continuously say to our people, be curious, look for the next step, innovate, question it. Because when we stop, we stop. I think that's when the business goes stale.
I think that's very encouraging what you're saying. So there is there's a lot of discussion about innovation, but what you're saying is actually encouraging. Just asking the questions is the first step, and it can trigger and a process. So it's not we have to have already something set up that is innovating. Just asking the question will trigger some processes
Right.
in thinking. Why are we doing it this way?
Yeah.
And will kind of unlock some ideas.
Absolutely. And I think people sometimes define innovation that it belongs to research.
Yeah,
And I think this is the biggest misconception
yeah,
there is out there, that actually innovation can be, everywhere. It can be in our own household, right? um, I think simple things like this process that I said in production. I mean, it wasn't a huge innovation, but it improved the process. It reduced waste, and I think these are sorts of things that we really need to look for more, because they are innovative steps to take to actually better your processes, better your systems, and maybe in research there could be that next big idea that comes through, but that's not what all
yeah,
innovation is about.
yeah. Absolutely. There was also a point when I realized is, as I can speak for Germany, that's where I have the most experience. That innovation equals research, and a lot of funds. Like if
Yeah,
you do research, you will automatically innovate. But innovation is actually how it changed over the course of time. At the moment, it connects to what you said. It's kind of the speed and the kind of the velocity and number of ideas that we can
yeah,
actually discuss. It's a number and velocity. How quick can we ask questions, and how quick can we discuss them, and how many, like it's a
yeah,
numbers game. It's a kind of
yeah,
this how they say, it's an exponential curve. The more question you ask, the the higher is the probability that there will be a
yeah,
key question that can change something.
correct.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. So, I talked about one of the brainstorming techniques, and it's really simple one. All you do is just put a problem on a piece of paper, and then you have people in the room, and then they just write what they think, their idea for solving that problem, and then you pass it on to the next person, right? And then it goes around
Mm.
the table, and it's actually a brilliant way to do it, because everyone sort of it triggers people's thoughts. And so, okay, if I could put idea, well, actually, instead of putting the box upside down, we could put it flat, and so we can stack more boxes on top of it, and someone else goes, oh yeah, but if we put it in the rack, it might work
Mm.
a bit better.
Hmm.
And you just
Yeah.
spark that thinking, and
Hmm.
it really, it's really fantastic to see what happens in that room. I've done that with people who didn't think they could innovate or come up with ideas, and we used this process, and it was amazing. I mean, it took a little bit to warm up,
Hmm.
um, but once we started, everyone's going, oh, this is great. And then you can actually read the ideas and thoughts, and you can really see, okay, now we probably have one solid idea out of all these little snippets
Yeah.
that have come out from this group thinking. And it's also great to bring in, not only sort of people in the area. What I found was worked really well. Of course, people in the area are very much fixated on the problem, so they can't maybe see left or right.
Mm.
If you suddenly bring someone from finance and give them the same problem, or I don't know, from accounting, or
Mm.
IP, they might look at the problem from a totally different way, and so you get this totally different perspective on things that you might not have
Yeah.
considered prior to approaching this.
Absolutely. So, okay, just to close this thought, let's say for innovation, brainstorming techniques, there are not only brainstorming in a group, there's also brain writing.
Hmm.
This is probably a part of brain writing.
Hmm.
Okay, great. Okay, so speaking of innovation in a corporate, let's talk about the activities of CSL in
Hmm.
Marburg and in general.
Hmm.
I must say that when we meet and when you organize events, one really senses that is it's not a label. You're really excited about innovation, and you really invest as a company, but also the people behind it. Let's talk about what is, speaking about corporate focus and strategy, what is innovation? What does it mean for CSL, for the company?
Look, so I think, I've touched on a lot of these elements, and it's how we work, how we operate, how we deliver our promise to our patients. It's about our products, it's about our processes. It encompasses the whole entire culture within the organization. So the innovation label, we have it in our values, we have it in our, vision statements, but it means a lot of things, and it means a lot of things for different people. But I think how we work, how we operate, how we create new ideas for our patients, how we create our products, all of that gets covered under innovation. So it's quite broad. I would say what innovation means to CSL.
Okay, so it's not some kind of mysterious activities somewhere else in the garage, or it's actually part
Yeah. And we've actually, CSL has created even a portal, where they encourage employees to put in ideas. So and we get a lot of ideas actually coming from production, because new people come into the production area, and they see systems that are not working well. And so they suddenly write great ideas. And I know there was one that came from recently, that we were implementing some heating, cooling things on the fridges and freezers, which of course generates a lot of energy. And someone said, "Why are we doing this? I mean, this wastes really a lot of energy. What's the purpose of this?" And again, we tried to find out, and yes, some fridges need it, but most don't. But someone decided, okay, they all need it at one stage. And so the person actually just, again, questioned this process, and actually went, okay, well, it doesn't make sense, so we've reduced it. But innovation in R&D, it also means looking for that next product, looking for that next molecule. And we in my field, of course, we are product process development. So we look also for, okay, what do our patients want? We know that once upon a time, patients were loyal. They stuck with a product from a company. It was all about the company. It was fantastic. Now patients have a lot more choices out there. And so now they're saying, yeah, your product's good, but I have to inject it twice a day. This other product, I can just stick a patch on and I'm done, right? And so again, suddenly you start to compete. So I think we also just, our patients are dictating also that, how we innovate and what we need to innovate in.
Oh, that's very interesting. So you observe, it makes sense now you're saying, but even for such products that CSL produces, there is a different behavior also from patients.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. One of my favorite was the book "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," right? And it is so true. It is really, it always comes back into my mind every time I think. And we just heard a patient speak, one of our patients speak at a seminar, and she said exactly this, and a lot of the audience was shocked. They said, "Oh yes, I was on one of your products, and oh my god, it was a lifesaver. It was so fantastic. I got my life back." And she said, "But a year ago, one of your competitors produced a product, and I started being selfish, because that product I only had to inject once a week,
Yeah.
and your product I have to inject at least 2-3 times a week." So now it was no longer a do I want a better life? But yeah, I want actually more, than being able to survive. I want quality of life that matters. So this is, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And a lot of people were shocked. They said, "Oh my God, how can we have a patient like this?" And I said, "I think it's fantastic, because
Yeah.
she just told us, guys, you need to innovate. you need to keep looking what the next best thing is, because you can't just rely on patients will never leave you because you've got, great product.
It's a different culture, just a different culture from we're producing for, and we don't know, right?
Yeah.
The patients, in other industries, the customers.
Mm.
It's a different culture. Just you have what you're saying is a feedback loop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is an opportunity. Like Bill
A- a-
Gates said, listen to your customers that complain and
mhm.
are not satisfied. This is how you improve your product in your company.
Absolutely. And I really feel that's true. And so, CSL probably a few years back really started to bring the patients into our lives, just to also give us that reality check, because, research can be, focused so much on the molecule, and it's so intriguing, but you don't see the end in mind, right? And this is that problem statement. Your patient saying, actually, you know what? I don't want to inject the product. Can't you give me a pill that I can swallow,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And that's your problem statement. Okay, I can't have an injectable. I need to have an oral delivery. So how do I get there? What do I do with my molecules? What do I do with my processes? How do I get the molecule into the system that it does the same thing as the injection? And I think we've got so many fantastic problem statement coming from our patients that it's quite refreshing.
Yeah, it sounds like with this feedback loop, you can trigger like, or you can go two paths at least. The one that you get a feedback loop, you at the company or team, you sit down like, what can we do? Do you know any like let's find ideas. The it's kind of the internal
Mm.
innovation, like it's
Yep.
inside the team, the company. The other is to look around um, what is outside. How, like for you, what is the difference between internal innovation, external innovation in general? What does it mean for the company?
Yeah. Look, so I think, for me, the two need to always coexist together, because I think if you only rely on internal, you will not you might succeed at the beginning, but you will not succeed long term. So it's also CSL's perspective that we need to tap into the external as well as internal. Now, whether it's external is the patients, or externals are the university or collaborators or startups that have really good ideas, because I think the world is big, and there are a lot
Yeah.
of there's so much fantastic research being done in different fields that we need to somehow tap into, and yeah, and complement what we do internally with the external field. I mean, I've seen now a lot more companies coming online that are just specializing in searching out that external research, and seeing, almost searching for those startups, small startups that could support, and then, the companies could actually buy into such programs and see, and help the startups to really evolve in this space. And so I think it's really important, because this is also that external view that I told you about. When you're working in a space, you might not see what's right outside your front door, right? So you need always to bring in also external perspectives into the play. So yeah, at CSL I think we have relatively good balance. It definitely could improve between the external, what we do externally and internally. And I think, as you know, we are really increasing the external outreach a lot more now.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. That's the point. Let's could you tell us more about the biotech incubator
Mhm.
in Melbourne? What is the stage? What was the process behind it? Um, what's the focus? Are there already some experiences? Has it started
Mhm.
already?
Not yet,
No, not
but
yet. Okay.
not yet. So, but look, I can start by saying that probably about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we started to see that we needed to pull in a lot more external collaborations, a lot more external ideas to complement the pipeline that we had internally. And so we established a group called Research External Initiative. And that group's focus was to really go out there and search for these ideas, topics that we might be interested in supporting, not necessarily bringing them in immediately, but supporting. And so they set up the Research Acceleration Initiative. So no, the REI established the RAI, and this initiative is very active in Europe currently, mainly Switzerland and Germany, so the Marburg area, as well as small parties in the US, and quite a large element sits in the Melbourne. And this initiative, it really reaches out into the universities, mainly targets PhDs and postdocs, and supports programs that complement our portfolio. And by that, we establish the collaboration. We provide funding for a period of time. So I think just recently, in the last few years, we've been funding a couple of programs at the Marburg University. We founded one in Gießen, and quite a few also in Switzerland. And that's how we really started to start, get a feel for what was out there. And then we started seeing, okay, what else can we do? And we started looking at these incubators, and the incubators were quite attractive to us because we felt that if we bring in the incubators into our space without the incubator being CSL incubator, but supported by CSL, that not only did we potentially could tap into support the sort of the community, but tap into also some of the programs if they look promising, but also the interaction between an entrepreneur and a corporate scientist. We thought that's a great combination, right? Because one has the process in mind, how do I get to the end game, and the other one's got the starting idea. And I think putting those two molecules together really excites more curiosity. And so we started
how you build the bond like between those molecules. How do you connect that? Like, do they just what is your
It's called
experience?
pizza
Do you
and
just
beer
connect?
nights.
Sorry.
It's called pizza and beer nights.
Okay.
But it is really important because, I mean, when we started, how a successful incubator looked like built into this corporate structure, we always found that there was an element, okay, not only bringing the people in with the ideas, but what can the corporate world give those people? And so you think of joking, but a lot of these incubators, they have the pizza and beer night where they can exchange some of the problems they face or ask us questions on, okay, how can we do this? How do you approach development? So they learn from our perspective development or regulatory strategies on what they need to do, and vice versa. They tell us some exciting things about how they
Yeah.
were working, and it does spark that interest between the two parties. And I hope that it also helps the community, the startup community, to really put their ideas to life, right?
Yeah.
That's really what we want. And so this is how a discussion started in Melbourne. And there we were backed by the Australian government, who really wanted to provide funding. We already had at the table the universities. So then we established a separate companies, an incubator hub, where CSL and Wehi and University of Melbourne are equal partners, right? So that they run this incubator space with its own company name, and push those ideas in there. But the incubator is also run by an independent facilitator who also provides a lot of the services there.
Yeah.
I think
think
in
that
Marburg, in Marburg, it's a little bit different, because here I mean, I know you know this, but I still think we're sitting on a pot of gold here, right? We have the universities, we have the clinic, we're surrounded by, great institution, and we've got the corporate park here, which provides so much opportunity. And I think you nicely said it. How do you build the bridge from one side of the Marburg Valley to the other one? That's really what we need. And I think we would have. I know I have a lot of energy. We have the energy to really fuel this innovation ecosystem here.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of, I've been to a couple of times in the US. When you meet informally and you exchange ideas, and they say that what they're building without being anxious that someone will,
Mhm.
I won't copy. Nobody has time. And I mean,
Yeah,
even a corporate won't copy unless it's very, very strategically close. It's just such a tremendous learning experience. First of all, it builds trust and it accelerates the thinking. And I think it's just a personal opinion. Just building communities like ecosystems. You need infrastructure, etc.
mhm,
But building this culture is quite simple. Just providing the space and opportunity to exchange ideas, and people are
mhm.
open to open themselves what they are doing, not how to do it.
Correct,
Right? What's
correct.
the right way to do it? But what you're excited about? What are you doing, and not what's the best way, what's the best process
Mhm,
to bring it. And people open up, and it helped me at least anticipate, like in biotech, where the industry is going, because you hear a lot of kind of signals, you get a
mhm.
lot of signals, and then you have a picture where the whole industry is actually moving.
Yeah,
And for companies, I think this is very important in order to translate in an ecosystem. What do we want to do that is relevant in 10 years?
absolutely.
So maybe you can comment on that. What is the interest of CSL in Marburg, in terms of biotech, activating talents, etc.?
Mhm.
That's fine, but you have also a higher a vision, and serving patients. Just, there is sometimes the discussion why corporates are even doing that, right? And we can talk about business, etc., but the question is, how can we serve patients?
Mhm.
How can we innovate better? Is this just one company, or is it working together? There are even alliances between large
Correct.
pharma companies to exchange data. I'm just going to a very high level, how you approach that, so we can go to the regional level
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Look, so let me start. I mean, I think COVID really taught us a lot. I have to say. I mean, when people started working on the COVID vaccine, I mean, companies started forming alliances, right? I mean, we were part of a big alliance with some of our competitors, and we had a problem to solve, and we knew that we could not do it on our own, right? This is I think the biggest myth, that companies can do things on their own. They simply can't. We rely on a lot of different things, but here we really established this alliance between, I think it was Takeda and Baxter, and we worked together to see whether we could come up with a solution very quickly. We were providing each other's reagents, we were having discussions about the product, how we could do it, and this is on the plasma side. Uh, and I think this showed us that we kind of forgot about, okay, here's my wall and here's your wall, and we kind of cross over, but we really work towards one common goal. And I think, this is where I see a lot of the benefits, also with the ecosystem. But you touched on a really important point that I wanted to come back to. It's the trust, and I've heard that just today from our legal team, because they said, well, hang on, how are we going to protect our property from the startups? And I said, why do you fear that we need protection, right? I mean, we have all the legal documents. I mean, they might feel the same, that we're going to steal whatever they're working on.
Yeah.
And so it was quite, and it is that mindset where we need to shift. It's not about taking, it's about supporting to get to the next phase, to get to the patient. It's for better of the patients. It's better, if we can, even if we can bring the products to the market quicker, right, with some ideas that are out there. I think we have to keep focusing on the end game. And that's what, me thinking about this incubator is, I want to focus on the end game, right? I don't care whether it's the company or the startup who gets the glory. In the end, if you have the solutions to the world's problems, who cares where it came from, right? It's just who gets rich in the end.
I think that's a great perspective, that there is some that understanding of innovation as an isolated environment has shifted significantly with the COVID. And I also I it seems like we, like, especially I can speak for biotech, in biotech and life sciences. I don't think there is protection, or like something is required, unless it's very, very close strategically.
Mm,
Because when your reputation as a scientist is damaged, it's a kind of a long-term
of course.
thing. So it's I agree that, like, huge walls are not required, because science is complex, and it's better to lower the
And
barriers.
again, we see this with COVID probably accelerated. We started seeing a lot of this come through. I mean, some of the spaces, I mean, the lab space for us is changing. We see a lot more robotics entering our lab space. We see a lot of more programming, mechanistics models. So it's moving from the pipetting now to computer modeling of our processes to get there quicker with less wet experiments and so on. But for this we have to tap into other partners, and so you're again establishing those links, collaborations, and scientists are getting more and more used to running hackathons. Put a problem out there and see what you get back, and see who can help you solve the problem. So I see that our industry is changing in that space. And I mean, we've done it just also not long ago, where we put a couple of problem statements out there and said, this is our problem statement. We put it, it was in the US, we put it US wide, and then we saw what came back and said, okay, well, maybe these ideas are great. Can we support you in these ideas? And if they said, no, we can't, well, we also said, okay, can we take them in and see how we evolve them? And so I think, our environment is very much changing in this space, where we are tapping into, scientists are used to tapping into scientists worldwide to help them come solve some of the solutions.
It's an interesting thought, because while we are talking, I thought about ecosystem in an ecosystem, because something like Opentrons, where they design pipetting robots, which are
Mm-hmm,
very affordable, and you can use Python to write
mm-hmm,
protocols,
mm-hmm,
and they also willing to help you design new plates, etc.
mm-hmm,
So this, like, opening this space will enable creating new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
plain and simple. So I think it's important to consider that, because the consequence of such, I'm not, it's not a play of such possibilities are exponential. You cannot
Yep.
anticipate. It's good to be part of it, just to have this flow of what is happening.
Yeah, and we have such a lab actually. We've utilized one of these labs in the US. So our scientists were actually just doing programming, and the US lab, the robots were executing.
Hmm.
So, it's
Cool.
just sort of kind of blows your mind, because you think,
Yeah.
okay, my experiment, I'm just one person, and there is a whole heap of robots, of course, some people as well, creating these experiments for me.
Yeah.
And so, we always said, our strategy is double our portfolio, double our capabilities, but not necessarily double our workforce. And in order for us to do that, we really need to create these ecosystems that help us get there sooner.
Or at least being part of it. I mean,
Yep.
I think it could be overwhelming to say we need to create, because it's a long-term process, but being part of it. And you're right, so some things also in like at least in crystallography, the particle
Hmm.
accelerator has COVID actually forced them to build remote data collection applications.
Hmm.
So you can use the particle accelerator like from home, when you are like everything
Yep.
is in place. It created a lot of uh, time actually. So you
Hmm.
don't need to travel. We'll use
Yep.
technology to do that. I think that was for us at least very exciting. Well, let's talk a bit about the R&D campus in
Hmm.
Marburg. So it was this no, it was last month. We have the opening.
Hmm.
Tell us a bit about more, and what are the plans for future.
Yeah. So I mean, the R&D campus, just a little bit about the design. I mean, it was designed with a mind that we wanted to create the campus. We wanted to create that university campus, so that means we created different zones for working spaces. So we have the coffee area, we have the common room, or the US guys call it the Rathkeller, right? Where you go with your mates for have a few drinks and write your ideas on a napkin, right? That's what usually happens. Then we had the library spaces, we have the common spaces, collaboration spaces, and we have our own labs, but we have the incubator labs. And I think, when I look at this system, it's almost a university campus in itself, because you have so many different disciplines there. We certainly, CSL will have everything from research to recombinant to viral vector to plasma development. We have pharmacology, toxicology in there. We have regulatory. We have our clinical guys, our farm tox guys, and our safety guys in there. And so we've created this miniature, and then bringing in that incubator, bringing in those startups. I think that sort of brings that whole building to life on its own.
Yeah.
And so we tried to remove all the borders from there. We went away from the traditional way of working. So there are no offices, there are no dedicated desks. People simply come in, they decide what activities they are doing, and they go to the space where they need to do that activity. And the same applies for the labs. So, we sort of combine, typically in Marburg, we had the research lab and molecular biology lab, and then we had the product development lab for recombinants separately and analytics separately, and everything was separated. Now we've just put it all into one big playing field. And again, we hope that, again, this stimulates collaboration, this stimulates different ways of thinking, creates maybe new ideas. Um, you know, um,
It will create new
we're
ideas. It will. I'm sure, just by
um,
creating those spaces. Yeah.
yeah, and just having also space. We've been asked a number of times whether we could host events there. Absolutely, it would be great to host events. It would be, we hope to recreate that Behring roundtable discussions that were happening. Those really great scientific discussions. For me, that campus now is starting to take life. I've seen first few people sort of sneaking around and having a look, being really excited. And I think more people that we get in there, the different kinds of people, from all aspects of life, I think it will be a buzzing environment to be in. And so on the incubator space, I mean, we have one lab where the I don't know, PhDs, postdocs, startups can simply rent a bench. They just want to try out an idea how it works, so they can rent a bench to try their ideas. It will be equipped with basic equipment. If we need more, if they need more elaborate techniques, it's either us or the university that can support them. Now, if their ideas are moving along quite well, then they can sort of graduate to the next space where they can rent a small lab, right, where they have a bit more space, a bit more protection. And then actually PharmaServe just came to the table and they said, well, we are ready to also create more space and bigger lab space.
For
And so
later
then there'll
stage.
be the next graduation space once once the companies actually establish themselves that they have a bigger lab to go into. So it's almost this three-way progression that we want to create here.
Makes a lot of sense. I think that's critical for life science companies to have those three stages.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you have a dedicated space for ideas for startup companies, for any teams. When do you? I mean, it's a huge project. When do you anticipate that it will start to operate? Just so we can spread the word in the community also.
Look, I'm a bit of a dreamer here, but maybe I would love to see it operating by summer. I really would like to see. We are trying to secure some funds. We are trying to secure the network that we need to, the partners, the collaborators that we want to sit at the table, that can operate such a network. So we've done the first steps. I think we have, people like PharmaServe, people like the Marburg University. They want a seat at the table. So I think we've done the first step. We're just having some plans draw up for the labs. Marburg Council is also interested to put in money to support us in this venture. I mean, I think it's not one-off payment that we would like from the government. We would like ongoing, because we would like them to sponsor, entrepreneur weekends or lectures or something like that. So I think we need to think about it. So we're just building out the business case, but I hope with all my heart that by summertime I can invite at least the first startups to come in.
The first cohort, the first cohorts could potentially, like you're saying in the scientific language, potentially start to work there. Okay. And do you have already an event space there that could be used?
So we have a couple of event spaces. We've got quite a large event space in the main atrium. So the building actually has this atrium surrounding the labs and working spaces. We also, and that holds up to 600 people. So that's huge.
Wow. Okay.
But we also have in the collaboration area a space for about 80 people, which is set up a little bit differently to the formal one. It's got bean bags. It's got little seats that you can reorganize, and so that's another space that can be utilized. And there are, of course, some formal meeting rooms that can be also utilized, for such events.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's very promising. We had many discussions that about this, and I'm kind of happy that it's. I would say it's ESL, but it was actually um, Vicky and Lars, like who are behind this. They're very excited about innovation, very supportive, fast thinking, open minded. So
But
from
Serghei, it was
yeah,
also your spark that helped us fuel the fire, right?
yeah, guilty. So I'm excited about Marburg. I'm excited about the talents there. Also the
Mhm,
research. It just needs a path for those who would like to um, innovate in terms of bringing insight from the research to the real world, so it can
mhm,
improve the world, impact lives in a better way. Um, like I'm driven by improving lives, by supporting anything that will lead to better therapeutics. So for
mhm.
example, but this requires a path, a network, because it's just the nature of this undertaking.
Yeah.
Like you need the lab, you need the experiments, you need the gathering day. So but from my side, thanks for doing that, and accelerating the whole process.
Thank you, and it's always a team effort. So I think you can't do it alone. But once you get a group of people together, you get the momentum, you get the critical mass, and then it very quickly attracts more and more people.
All right. Vicky, thanks a lot for joining Startup
Thank
Grind
you.
Marburg and talking about the future of the biotech ecosystem in Marburg. Thank you.
Thank you, and hope to see you soon.